So, Don, thank you for being here with us today and taking time from your very, very busy schedule. Don, I've had the pleasure of working with you at McDonald's for the past 15 years on marketing communications initiatives. So I'm really excited to talk to you about the D&I space. And I know everyone here is pumped to get more information in terms of your experiences and perspectives and insights, okay? We already have had some wonderful content this morning. We were talking about some of the barriers, specifically barriers to D&I in public relations, but barriers to D&I exist across the various industries. So my first question to you, I'm going to continue that conversation, is you ascended to the president and CEO of one of the most iconic brands in the world, McDonald's. Now you have formed Cleveland Avenue, which is a private equity and venture firm that deals with in the food service. I'd like to know, what were some of the barriers that you were challenged with on your journey as an African-American man in corporate America? We just heard this morning about the astounding statistics that prevent that sort of ascension. So you had to have faced some of these barriers, and we'd like to hear more about what they were and potentially how you handled some of them.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. And as I said to Michelle, it's always good to see Michelle. She is absolutely stellar and represents all of us very well in the PR space, so I appreciate that. Also, I know the prior person talked about Al Golan. Just a real quick hit, Al was a very dear friend in June, and he was a good person. And so I would start there relative to barriers. So the first thing, and you all will know, I am slightly different in my perspectives around D&I. I believe in action. I'm also, with all due respect, I had an uncle who once said something to me and I took it to heart. He said, don't host pity parties and don't attend them. Okay. And so I'm not a pity party attender. So I always looked at, there's always been barriers. Someone once asked me one day, they said, Don, what's it like to be an African-American CEO? I said, I don't know if I know, because throughout my life, every morning when I wake up and look in the mirror, it's the same guy looking back. So while you look at me and I'm very different, I look at you and you're very different. So every last person in this room is diverse. You come from different places. You got different backgrounds. The barriers, I think, to entry, my first barrier, I have to say, was my own mindset. I walked in a lot of rooms where I was the only one to look like me. I walked in a lot of rooms in the U.S. I walked in a lot of rooms around the world. If I walked into a room with Putin and I went up to see him, it was, it wasn't a whole lot of people look like me. But I think one of the greatest challenges is when you walk in that room, who are you facing first? Are you facing you before you even got in the room saying, I know they're going to be looking at me thinking this, they're going to be thinking that, they're going to be thinking this, because you can take yourself out of the game real quick. I walked in the rooms, and I learned to walk in the rooms and say, you know what? It's kind of like the Batman movie with the Joker when he said, wait till they get a load of me. I kind of walked into the room thinking, you may not know me yet, and I don't know you, but by the time this conversation's over, we will know each other, and we will decide whether or not we might be able to be beneficial to each other, whether that be in business or in life. That is a complete and a total shift from walking in thinking about the barriers. So I want to right-size barriers. Barriers are doors of opportunity, but most barriers start with us, and they start with a reflection of who you are, who you see that you are. I was raised by my grandmother. She recently passed away at 103, and she raised me from 2 weeks old. Barriers. I mean, this lady, she lived at a time when there were real barriers. My barriers were walking into a room with people who didn't look like me. That's not a barrier. That's an opportunity. She would have loved to have had that barrier through a lot of her life. There's a lot of people who came before me on whose shoulders I stand. They would have loved to have had that barrier. So my first thought is, the first barrier is myself. The second one is, I call it being competent and understanding and aware of the situations around you. Someone referred to this to me once as calling it read the tea leaves, Don. Know what room you're walking into, know who you're walking into that room with. Again, don't call them barriers, call them opportunities. There are some people who've done some crazy stuff over their lives, but when you walk in that room, walk into it as an opportunity. So I always believe, one, walk in confident. Two, walk in, face me first before I get in that room. And the third thing was understand the situation you're walking into and try to educate yourself as much about that space as you can.
You have an incredible sense of confidence and self-awareness that, unfortunately, I do not see in lots of today's young people. How do we instill some of that? And I don't know if others agree with that, but I don't see the level of confidence. I sometimes have people at my agency who don't want to present, who don't want to stand in front of the client, who don't want to be the vocal one in a particular meeting, and I'm always trying to infuse that in them. Give us, I know your grandmother did a heck of a job, but and if we could all take that master class, we would. So what are some of the things that you would share with people here today to really help infuse that sort of confidence and self-awareness in some of today's youth?
I think, Michelle, one of the things is there's a responsibility. I think most people, particularly younger people, first of all, they're brilliant. I mean, and some of you in the room have no idea how brilliant you are. You outshine the competence and the intellect and the world views that I and many who came up with me, we ever had. We didn't, encyclopedia, yes. Internet, no. Not when I was there, no internet. Black and white, rotary dial, yes. So the first thing is the mindset is so strong. And so I think we have to engage them in ways, one, by ensuring that we're not trying to place them where we are, but we're trying to show them a pathway to where we are. So one of the things I believe that we can all do, and it's incumbent on us, is someone said earlier, serving as mentors, and there was a conversation about sponsors. A lot of the folks just need somebody to put their arm around them and say, you know what? I want you to go to reception with me. You don't have to do a thing. I just want you to go with me. In their mind, it may be, I don't know if I have the right clothes to wear. I've never been in that situation before. Don't worry about the clothes. Answer the questions before they even get there. Take away some of the demystifications. You know what? Don't worry about the clothes. I'm going to be wearing this. You wear that, what you got on right now. We're going to go at 6. You're going with me. And I'm just going to introduce you to people. They need access. They need access to surroundings that are different, that help pull them out of their current state of mind. Number 2, exposure. Once they've got access and they understand, wow, I actually can stand in this room and I'm actually okay here. Then they need a little bit more exposure. So the next time it's about, you know what? To your point, Michelle, I want you to be able to present this little piece here or there. Sometimes we try to jump them too fast, too quick. And they're carrying all this other stuff about entering the room, and we're talking about presenting to the room. Let's at least bring them in the room first, get them acclimated a little bit. It doesn't take them long. They're very quick learners, though. So I think just putting your arm around, exposure, access, some opportunity, and being that person that they can talk to about all of those things that they don't know if they can talk to you about. Because there's a lot of that, too. I got some fears here. But if I say it, then that means that I'm afraid. If I don't say it, I'm not afraid, but I don't know. If I walk in the room and someone asks me a question and I don't know the answer, I got to know all the answers. If I don't know all the answers, I can't walk in the room. I didn't know 90% of the answers when I walked in the room.
Same here.
So I think it's those kinds of things, Michelle. And I think all of us can do that to help them along.
Okay, I'll slow down because I do just push them in there and say, it's time for you to make this presentation.
Well, but
you've seen it before,
but
so
you had to do
come
that
on.
too, though.
I
You
did.
built your business.
I did because I worked alongside Al Golan, and that's exactly what he did. He pushed me right into that water. I was the only African American there for probably a long time. I'm glad that it is now more diverse, but yeah, I got pushed right into that water. let's talk a little bit about helping leadership understand the importance of D&I. We had some robust conversation about that as well. And I actually in the 80s had conversations with Al about the importance of it. So what would you say in terms of things that we can share to really, really help our organizations understand its importance?
So I put in two buckets. One, what is it and what's incumbent on each of us to do? And two, how do you ready an organization, so to speak? And I'll say organization. I won't say another person. I'll say treat each person as an organization because there's a lot of stuff going on in there. I've always believed, and Pat Harris was mentioned earlier, who brought me to McDonald's, her and a guy named Mel Hobson. I call her the mother of McDonald's from a diversity perspective because Pat's just phenomenal. I think there's several steps, and I think here's where we also have some gaps sometime. If you skip a step, in my estimation, organizations fall backwards. Number one, and some of these are going to sound so basic, you're going to say, Don, get out of here. There's no way you got to do that. Number one, I would say, is understanding, or better yet, be aware that there are differences. Now, a lot of people, God, come on, Don. No, I mean, people and organizations need to be aware that there are differences. How can you tell when they don't? You can talk about D&I all you want to. If I look on your website and I don't see people of different genders and races and young and older, if I don't see that, you're not aware. So don't tell me you're aware if in all of your materials you pay no attention to the fact that your consumer base is hugely diverse. If the whole notion behind what you do, I'm at a reception, and I look at and listen to a lot of stuff. You play the same genre of music across the whole thing. Your drinks are the drinks that old guys used to drink when it was a smoky room. Everything you set up, because you know what? If you ever want to understand an organization, this is going to sound really, look at the bar when there's a reception. Because typically seniors have picked what goes on that bar at some point in time, and everybody's trying to please them. You can tell the youthfulness or youthful spirit of it. So I'll just say, one, be aware that there are differences. Number two, accept the differences so that you can get to the next point, which is, I'm aware now, and I accept it. That acceptance point is hard for a lot of people. There's a lot of people who will say it, but to truly accept it means that you're now willing to do the third part, which is you understand that differences can be used for a broader business advantage. Because once you understand that and you really believe it, then you will leverage differences. Because if you don't understand, if you don't accept it, if you're not aware of it, accept it, understand it, why in the world would you ever leverage it? It wouldn't make sense to you. So many people try to jump straight to, oh, we're doing this and we're doing that and we're doing this to enhance our diversity. Why? Why are you doing it? So I'll give you one quick story on leveraging diversity. I was a director of operations in one of our regions in the United States, and at that time, we had an African-American employee network, a black employee network it was. There was a Hispanic employee network. There was a women's network. We had, at the time, we called it was a gay and lesbians network. It was called back then, and that was in the 90s. And what was really interesting is I walked by a room, and there was a movie called The Color of Fear. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this. And we were going to go into the mountains with the diversity networks, and we were going to talk about the color of fear because they had started to do this. So I walked past the room, and there's about 6 white guys from our region sitting in the room. And I walk in, and I said, guys, what's happening? What's going on? They said, Don, we just don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? They said, well, who's speaking for us? Now, this is in Denver, and Denver was on the mild front end of a change relative to Hispanic influence and an influx of people in terms of diversity. And so, you know, when they said it, I said, what do you mean? They said, well, you got all of these, networks, but nobody's speaking for us. I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. We should have a white male network. A couple of y'all, when I went back and I told the other networks this, and they thought I had lost my mind. And I said, you're either are supportive of diversity and inclusion, or you're not. If you're in the state of California, state of Florida, are you supportive of African Americans and Latinos, or are you supportive of diversity? Be careful that our true support is not ethnic or gender related versus being diversity and diversity of ideas related. Because when you make a change in a switch, what you do is you minimize the impact of what it was you said you wanted to do. I never asked for a handout as a CEO or African American. Don't give me a handout. Give me an opportunity to sit at the table. Because if I get an opportunity to sit at the table, you'll see what I do. Be careful. But I think companies need to be able to leverage diversity. That will open the doors to all of us if they truly leverage diversity. And so I think those are some of the steps, Michelle, that we need to go through.
I have one final question, and then I'm going to open it up because that all sounds absolutely strategic, focused, great to put into a plan. How do you then, though, make sure that it lives beyond the plan, lives beyond a specific leadership mission and philosophical approach, and it's part of the DNA of a company, so that no matter what management looks like, no matter what the C-suite is comprised of, it is a part of that company's culture?
That's the toughest one. So I mentioned there's the organization and there's the person, there's us. One of the things that I tried to do as CEO was ensure that all of our team reflected the demographics of the population. I see Bridget here, who headed communications for McDonald's, and she and I worked very, very closely together for years, and Heidi there. So the truth of the matter, I failed at something, and I'll tell you what it was. My focus was so much on getting us there. We had, 50% of the officers were women. We had, at one point, I think the numbers roughly, I did pay attention, was 25 African-American officers, 19 Latino officers. We were a very, very, very diverse organization. The franchisee body was extremely diverse. The employee base was more diverse. And I felt really, really great. Truth be told, what did I and Pat and Bridget and others around us, what else did we do, Heidi, to install that, institute that, so that it was so deeply embedded in the culture, no matter who the leader was, that it would have been there? I look back today and I say it's part of what I failed. It's not as many today, nowhere near as many. So people could say, well, you didn't fail, others came in and changed it. Now, institutionally, I didn't do what I needed to get done. Now, what was that? I don't know.
That was going to be my next question.
At that one, I mean, I wish I could sit here and I could say, man, I wanted broader geographic diversity, international. We did that. All of us brought in people from around the globe. We did a lot of things. What happened was the focus got off of it. And I will not say it's malintent. I will just say it is no intent. If you don't intentionally have each and every day the fact that you want to strive to be a very diverse organization, if there's a slate of candidates, it better be a diverse slate. Doesn't say you're going to hire A, B, but if it's not a diverse slate, you can't even start there. If you're going to look at media, you better have some folks across the landscape that can support you, that from all walks of life, and understand the various cultures. Today, a big part of that is also generational gaps and generational changes. But how much did we institute there, Michelle? I don't know. What would we have done differently? Man, we could probably sit up all night trying to figure it out. But my intent is to try to help figure it out, because I think there are some things. Intentionality, institutionalized intentionality is probably where the gap is for many organizations when they go through change.
one really quick question. Was there the accountability in terms of compensation tied to D&I metrics? I know Heidi Gardner mentioned that, and I said, hooray, because I think that might be one thing that has got to happen to really, truly move the needle. So was that a part of the process?
That is not what got us to the levels we got to. So for many organizations, let's just assume that you tie compensation to it. And I know there are some that do. Ours had compensation tied to it because there was a black man sitting in the CEO office. So if you come to talk to me and you don't have diverse folks, and I know you look at our team, and our collective team, if you looked across it, was very diverse. If you looked across that team and you didn't see, you were bringing slates of people that didn't look like that, whether it was Bridget or Gloria or myself or Jose Amario or JC Gonzalez-Mendez or Kevin Cook or Jeff Stratton, white guys, if they saw that, they'd be like, so it was institutionalized, and so when it came up, I didn't have a percentage of the salary that was a part of it. Here's the only thing I worry about when we talk about time compensation. For a company whose revenue streams are based on A, B, C, D, and E, if you're going to tie my compensation to it and you're going to put 5% of my compensation at risk, go ahead, put 5 at risk. There's another 95. So my perspective is, I don't think it's a bad thing to do, but make no mistake, it is not the golden hand. What has to happen is it has to be an intentional support of broader diversity. And then that should flow through all of your systems, training systems, hiring, recruitment, retention. One of the reasons people don't stay is because they don't feel comfortable when they get there. Do you have a way of orienting and acclimating people into your culture that lets them know you can bring all of you to this business? I used to say that to all of our folks, whoever you are, whatever you eat at home, whatever you do, however you speak, bring all of you to work, because you can't do the chameleon thing. It doesn't work well. You walk through the door and you're a different person. You walk out the door, you're somebody different. At some point, there's some stresses there. I need all of you. I need every last ounce of who you are when you come through that door, because that's what makes us better. So I think compensation, again, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think sometimes we overrate it based upon what the real breakdown in most bonus systems are.
And with that, I am now going to open up the floor to questions. We've got about maybe 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes or so.
All right, thanks. It was great to see you all.
I'm here to save the day.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? My name is Choni, and I just graduated college. So I guess on the traditional pyramid of stages of your career, I'm on the lower end. So I've been in situations where I guess I don't know how to leverage diversity. I've done the be aware, accept and understand. But for example, I've been in interviews where people look at my resume and immediately go, "Oh, so you can't help with our clients that don't speak English," since I'm bilingual. And so my reaction is that I can obviously offer you way more than that. So I guess in that case, do you have any advice for people that are in their entry level, I guess like earlier stage of their career? How can we take actions to leverage diversity when we don't have, the platform to be, with everyone else at the table?
The one thing I'd say to you, Charlie, first of all, you do have leveraging experiences. It should call your life, because I think you've probably looked like that all your life too, huh?
Yep.
So here's the first thing I'd offer to you is, if you're in an interview and someone makes certain comments to you that way, there's two things you need to do, especially in interviews. One, don't associate the entire company with the interviewer, number one. But number two, you need to then do some checking at a different level to see whether or not, if culturally that organization feels that way, then shake the dust off your feet and go to the next organization. Because if you feel that they really don't have a grasp and that they would not be willing to, I'm not saying that they're going to open up with open arms, but I am saying that you see the pathway for you to be able to be a productive complement to that organization. If you see that pathway, you go hard at it, regardless of who's saying crazy little stuff. If you don't see that, then go to the next company. And why do I say that? Because you have way too much to offer. My first day out of college, when my first job, I never forget the first day I went in, and it was taped to the middle of my desk was a white cross. That was my first day. I peeled up the white cross, and as an electrical engineer, naturally I had a pocket protector. But I peeled that up, took out my pens and stuff, and I got started. That was an organization, that was one person who did that. That wasn't the organization. And I went on, great relationships, great career, that first part of the career. So I would say to you, be who you are, authentically you, let that shine through when you're talking to the companies. And the companies that will value you completely are the ones that are going to extend a hand. Those who, have some other issues around that, if you think it's the interviewer, because you came to that company for some reason, you did your own homework. So there was something you saw that took you to that company. If you think this is a crazy interviewer, bypass them, find someone else in the company, which you can do, especially today, and talk to them. If you think it's an organizational piece, and today you can do a lot of fact finding. If you think it's an organizational piece, go to the next organization. That would be my thought.
Hi, my name is Maura Farrell, actually, and I work at Keynote, a PR firm here in Chicago. I was wondering, what could we do at agencies like today, this afternoon, or tomorrow, Monday morning when we get to work to change this? We have an issue with recruitment and keeping minority candidates. And I just wondered, I love the bar story. I love like those tactical things that we could do right away. Look at our holiday party, look at our snacks, like just your culture of an agency. And then my follow-up question is, what do you do to your Diet Coke to make it taste so good?
The second was a secret, but no, we can talk. I think the first one, I think you answered it already. If you're having difficulty keeping them, talk to them and ask them why they're leaving. And when I say talk to them, I don't mean the cursory, so you're leaving us, why are you leaving? I got a better job. Oh, they're so happy for you, blah, 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 blah. And that's I mean, talk to them. What could we, is there anything we could have done different? So you're going to be gone. There's going to be some more people coming in. Tell me what you would change to change our environment a little bit. Ask things that will put you at some level of humility, but open up the doors to receive true input and feedback. I think the other thing is for the existing folks that are there, have some forums and some sessions and try to do it as informally as possible, but get a very diverse group of people together and say, hey, look, how do you think about the way we do this or the way we do that? Pose to them. One of the things we did was, it sounds real crazy, but McDonald's was very kind of formal. And one of the things we were looking at was a jeans policy. Now, I'm from the old school. Today I wear jeans every day. Now that I left and we're in the venture capital space, I'm Mr. Jeans and I love it. Shirt out, I love it. But back then, if I wore jeans, they were going to be creased. I mean, I had a crease in, they laugh at me for that. So I wasn't supportive. But what we ended up doing through some coaching and counsel of several people was we turned the whole dress policy over to the Young Professionals Network. And what they came back with, I said I would abide by, and it ended up being fine. We ended up going with casual for those who weren't being with clients or suppliers, and if you weren't visiting restaurants, and it actually worked very well. I say that because sometimes what you've got to do is talk to those who are most impacted or most vulnerable relative to a decision you're going to make, but who have the least voice, because they'll give you great insight. The Diet Coke is basically the 3-stage filtration system and the water. And we calibrate the syrups every day.
So my point has to go, first of all, I'm Nadia Felder. I also just graduated from college, so I'm happy to hear that there's somebody in here like me. And my point has to go to something that you said, two things that you said. One, don't give me a handout, give me a seat at the table. Powerful. Perfect for me to hear. Another thing that stuck to me was bring all of you to work. Don't be a chameleon. And it's funny because in college, and I graduated from an HBCU, the best one, FAMU. But one thing that they hesitate on teaching us is don't bring all of you. Shockingly. So when you said that, it brought me back to my classroom, and they said, you know, you use the chameleon. I'm using the turtle. They use the turtle example. So turtles have shells, obviously, right? And they come out just a little bit, right? So I'm going to reveal a little bit of my culture, enough for you to know that I'm different, but I'm not going to give you all of me because then I might scare you, right? And so they teach us this at HBCUs, and and it's a culture thing. You know, it's a culture thing. Our cultures are different. So if I show you all of my culture and I tell you to accept me, that's frightening for you at some time. So I just want to know, you know, is it necessary for us to assimilate sometime just to get the seat at the table, just to say I'm here, but you know, give you ounces of what I really bring?
There are a lot of letters in the word assimilate. So. Here's what I mean when I say bring all of you. Bring the essence of who you are. Understand the culture that you're going into. And man, you've got to believe that culture is complementary to your personal values. And in seeing that and understanding that, bring all of you. Now, what I didn't say was slap people with all of you. This is different. You know, I'm going to dress the way I want to dress, look the way I want to look. When I make my turns, when I say my stuff, you're going to understand who I am up in here. That's not what I mean. What I mean is the essence of who you are as a bright, strong, African-American woman who is competent, capable, has her degree, and is able to help this company move forward. Bring 110% of it. What you don't want to bring, in my estimation, and this is something I also said, if you get to the point where you feel like, you know, they all speak very different, excuse it if it offends anybody, but if Don Thompson had walked in the room and said, hey guys, how are you today? That's not me. Why am I doing that? You know what? Initially, I wasn't part of the country clubs, but guess what? You know, that didn't make me less effective. You know, am I in one today? Guess what? I'm in one today. After 20-some years, they got me. But I would offer, but even there, I am the way I am right now. And so I would say, when I say bring all of you, life, you will go through changes. You will evolve. Hopefully with companies, you will grow. I can speak in the boardroom. I can speak in the neighborhood. I can speak with my family on Thanksgiving. I have not changed that fundamental nature of who Don is. Has it changed at all over the years? Absolutely. Are there things that I could do when I walk in a room that would slap people with where I grew up and all of that? Yes. That's not a part of me being in that room. You're at that company to help that company move forward. That's why you're there. But you're capable, competent, strong, secure in yourself. Bring that. And when you bring that, then they're forced to reckon with all of us for what we actually bring. Not what we talk about, what we bring to the table, because a company wants results.
That's a great answer. Don says he will stay 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes.
Really quickly, I'm not an alumni, but I hate Ohio State, so boiler up. A question I have. I'm in corporate. I work for Discover, actually, and you mentioned your diversity groups, and we actually sort of copied you. I believe a person who used to work for us came from McDonald's and started the employee resource groups. And at the time, it was one of those things done. Or, Discover's making a commitment to diversity, but what I've noticed with the groups, and we call them employee resource groups, is it's almost like there's now a fight for attention. And our marketing team is working with the Pride group, but they're not working with the Bold group, which is the African Americans. And Ola was on a marketing initiative and was getting all this attention. That's our Hispanic group. But then you know, our generational leaders group wasn't getting attention, and it's almost like it's created a little bit of divisiveness. And being in the department that funds some of their programs, I'm just trying to get an understanding of what you believe the central purpose of a diversity group should be for a company.
This is, first of all, thank you, a phenomenal question. And I would also offer to all of us, if you're not having discussions like this one, then remember I was asking about accepting and understanding and leveraging. If you're not having any of these conversations, you're way down on the spectrum. Because the other thing that true diversity and inclusion brings out is conversation, and a lot of conversation. And so what I would offer is that I can tell you, I don't know if there's a right answer, but I will tell you how we attempted to do it. All of the affinity groups, there were two things. First of all, on the budget side, everyone got the same budget, you know, effectively. And then based upon the size of the group, we kick more money in here, there, the other. But there was a budget for that. The budget was really it was tertiary. What we asked all of the various groups to do, one, I accepted and appreciated them, and I think your leadership teams have to and need to understand that, for what I expected of them and what I wanted at a minimum, which was this. Whether we like it or not, even in a very diverse world, there are commonalities and common journeys that some of us share. It is very supportive for organizations to have, and I will always believe, in diversity, affinity, networking groups, because there is that piece. Now, what I would offer is, along with that piece, there should be an openness. So this is tough, but we asked our groups to do two different things. One is be there to support each other, but before you support each other, I want to make sure you're supporting the company's goals. Because if it's not for the company, you're not going to be here. You got to support the company's goals. You support each other, clearly. And the other thing is bring strategies, perceptions, perspectives, and thoughts as to how to grow the business. So each one of the groups brought forward their thoughts about what we should be looking at a company level also. I would attend a lot of the meetings to go to speak to the groups, to hear from them, to sit in on little roundtable chats. And so I think that it is, one, very, very important that you have them. Two, leadership needs to be present. Expectations need to be set, but also included in those expectations. Don't get to the point where, as a corporate entity, you try to control everything that happens within an affinity group. And I've seen that too. You know, we don't know what they're doing in that room. Exactly, you don't need to. Because whether it's in that room, whether it's in the room sanctioned by you or not, they're in the room. They may be at a bar down the street or at a church around the corner. They are in the room. What you want to do is leverage the differences and diversity of what comes out of that group. The other thing we do is we would have collective groups. So we take the leadership from each of the affinity groups, and we'd have a meeting with all of the leaders together and talk about strategically what they thought, challenges they were facing, things they were bringing to the forefront, and it could be anything. What we tried to do was demystify what was happening in the room next door. I also asked all of our senior leaders. We would do what I call the road show tour. So we would have a big meeting where all the affinity groups would be in the meeting, but they would have their breakouts. And myself and our senior leaders would walk from room to room and just go in and sit with them for a while and say, what can we do to help? And they would have, 15, 20 minutes with us. And then we go to the next room. And then we go to the next room. So to show them that support as well, also shows them they don't have to be down the street, around the corner, at the church in the back, in the basement. They can be right here, right out front, and help us understand what they need.
Don, thank you so very much for your candor and transparency and sharing with us experiences and insights that are really going to help us inform the rest of the day. We appreciate you taking this time.
Michelle, my pleasure, and I hope you all have a great conference and a great day. And don't put too much on yourself relative to trying to change the world relative to how they view each and every individual in it, who are all very diverse. But if you live it yourself, check you first. Live it yourself, and then help incrementally and move it forward, and just be who you are. Everything else gonna work out.
Thank you again.
Yeah.